I was thinking on my own that there are certain things that could as well trigger conflicts in relationship. Principle of them in my own thoughts are finance and sex. These are things that oftentimes we don't like to talk about them, but I also think or have observed that these are issues that have continued to erode relationships, and we see ourselves moving from lover beds, and now we're estranged that we don't even believe in ourselves, and to the point of separation and finally divorce. Times are hard. If we had had higher statistics of divorce or marital conflicts, we're going to have more, experience more as the economy turns worse. So, finance is one of the things that could as well lead to estrangement in relationships. Someone whom you so loved at some point, you get estranged because there's a stiff economic position. And sometimes this happens when there is a reverse in income generation in the family. Some of us believe that the man is supposed to provide for his family. But when that is not the case and the woman begins to provide, there's an upside down of events financially in the family that can as well bring some strength in the relationship. And we have seen this a whole lot of times happening where people can no longer understand themselves because of financial issues. Again, it's about financial budgeting, managing the home front. Probably you've given out some capital for an investment or for a business to be set up, and at some point it goes down south. So sometimes these are issues that are never told, but they could cause. And the second one about sex is one that we know so common. And in most cases where families are having issues, trace down, you could see that their sexual relationship is not actually um, on top notch, but nobody will ever tell you. They don't talk about this. So I think this can also contribute. Their sexual compatibility or understanding can as well contribute or cause conflicts in the family. And that one, they don't talk about it. Nobody will tell you. They just keep it mute and then be telling you some other things that are secondary causes. But that could be the primary thing. So going forward, I'm sure Engineer Vivian hasn't exhausted herself, but network is affecting her. I'd like to yield the floor again to my dear friend King David to talk to us on the effects of these conflicts and the estrangement in families. How does it affect us? Is it cheap? These days it's so common when people will tell you and advise you, instead of dying in that marriage, please, I'd like you to walk out alive. Or rather than get yourself drowned in a relationship and get choked, those common lines that they use when they want to separate. They will advise you to just walk away, as if walking away is so cheap and is so easy. I'm sure it has its own causes, it has its own costs, it has its own implications. I don't know if you have anything to tell us regarding this line, the effects of marital conflicts and estrangements. King David, please, can I yield the floor to you?
Thank you very much. So, talking about the effects of marital conflict and estrangement. I love, there's something you said when we started, when you were introducing the session. You said we are in an era where for better, for worse, no longer means anything. and it's sad. It's sad. And a lot of times I usually ask couples that if they are really aware of what they were saying when they were making their vows. Now, if you look back in retrospect, even at your own wedding, for those of us who are, who can cast our mind back to our wedding, you will remember that a great number of us were not paying full attention to the events that were unfolding during our wedding. We were particularly interested to know if the food has arrived, if the caterer had delivered, if the drinks have come, our best man is like our PA, who is giving us updates every now and then, tapping us, distracting us from the occasion that brought us into our wedding. So much so that even the very vows that we made on the day of our wedding are like mere recitation to a lot of us. Many of us don't even remember the things that were said. It was like, repeat after me. And either the priest, the pastor, or the officiating party in the court would say, repeat after me. And they would say, and you will say back, without taking into cognizance what you were saying and who you were saying it to. And so that's one of the reasons why, our marriages are weak, because for starters, we were not intentional about those declarations that we made. Certain things like, take for instance, that I am going to give up everyone else for you. And then we get, but that is not the case. I'm not even talking about those who go out of their matrimonial bed to cheat. I'm also talking about those who do not actually take their partner as number one, like they vowed that they would. And so even from beginning, it's like we are acting out a script. We live in an era, sad to say. Let me point out an illustration from one incident that should be very fresh in our memory, which happened maybe about 3 years ago. And that's referring to the death of our beloved sister, Osinachi. And the whole thing was online. The internet was agog. In that season, I was personally sad to discover the number of marriage counselors who came online to be making marriage sound as though, or look, or appear as though marriage is second place, as though marriage does not have any value. And so we could, in fact, from that season, a lot of people to this day go into marriage already having option B, option C, option D. And I'm like, what's going on? That is not the marriage that is intended. That is not what marriage is supposed to be. And I know this is not a Christian meeting, but for me, who is a Christian, and I understand the origin of marriage, which happens or began in the Garden of Eden, from what the Bible records, it is a fact that man did not originate or initiate marriage. It was initiated by God. And so even the person who created us found out that this is something that we need. Marriage is indeed a necessity. And when we talk about a conflict is something that we cannot avoid in marriage. You will never show me someone who says he does not have conflict in his or her marriage, and I will show you a liar. Conflict is something we will never be able to avoid. But what we can do with conflict and in conflict is, how can conflict be resolved when they arise? Or how can we minimize the reoccurrence of conflict from a situation where it is very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very, very rampant. In other words, it happens every now and then. How can we minimize it? That is what we should be looking at. But in a situation where we do not know how to manage conflict, and we also do not know how to minimize it, then what are the effects? And the effect is obvious. Like I always would tell people, the effect of conflict is estrangement. So there is something I call maintenance in marriage. Let's assume you buy a car today. From the very moment you purchase that vehicle begins to deteriorate, whether you know it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not. And if after 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you don't even bother to open the radiator to check the level of water, you don't check the level of oil, you don't visit the mechanic to do an oil change, to carry out a maintenance. Now, it doesn't matter whether you got that vehicle brand new. Sooner than later, that vehicle will pack you on the road. Whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you acknowledge that fact or not. And so conflict is something, like I said, that will of necessity show up. But a lot of us do not carry out maintenance on our marriages. And like I asked, what is maintenance? How do we sit back and analyze our marriage on a day-to-day basis, maybe on a weekly basis, maybe on a monthly basis? Do you sit down with your partner to ask questions like, sweetheart, how am I doing? Or how are we doing? What are those things that I do that you don't like? What are those things that I do or that I have improved upon, that I have gotten better at? And if your partner gives you that feedback, are you willing to sit back and say, okay, now I know where I can make adjustments? Or now I know where I have improved and where I can do better? You wouldn't have this information unless you carry out what I just mentioned, which is maintenance. But if you do not carry out maintenance in your marriage, in your relationship, by checking out where the loopholes are, where you are doing poorly, where you have improved, that conflict that we have refused to resolve, that conflict that comes up on a consistent basis is going to eat up into the very fabric of our marriage. And before we know it, a marriage that was once like this will gradually begin to go apart. And whether you like it or not, that is the root and the cause for divorce. Show me a marriage where on a day-to-day basis, each person is striving to get better. Each person is striving to improve. I will show you a marriage that will always improve upward and forward, making progress all the time. Another thing I would always want to say, one thing about people, marriage, you know, I ask couples who come in for premarital counseling, I ask them, why do you decide to marry your partner? And you hear things like, oh, she loves me, he loves me, he respects me, she respects me, she does this, she does. It's all about what the other person is doing for them or for me. And while I understand that, because you see, one of the things that makes us get into relationships with people is because of the things that we stand to get from them, the benefits that we stand to enjoy from that relationship. It's natural. But by the time you get married, we are supposed to flip the coin, where it is no longer just about what I stand to benefit. What about what your partner stands to benefit? Are you not just a taker, but also a giver? Imagine a marriage where both couples are givers. Givers of time, givers of resources, givers of emotional connection, givers of love, givers of empathy, givers of kindness. All of these things. And then occasionally we stand to ask ourselves, what am I doing good? Or what should I be doing better in my marriage, in my relationship, where it's not just all about me, 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 me. It's two persons that makes this marriage work. What about the other person? Am I making you happy? Am I making you not to regret the day you met me and decided to toe this line of marriage with me? These are questions we should be asking ourselves. Which are the things that I call of maintenance? Otherwise, the effect, whether I want to mention whatever it is, is that your marriage will continually go apart little by little. Every day it is shifting. Every day it is shifting. And before you realize it, you'll just come to find out that you are in the same house or married to a stranger. Somebody you thought you know, but you do not know the person. These are the things that causes separation. These are the things that causes divorce. Where it's all about me, it's all about me, and it's all about me. Thank you very much, sir.